Magandang araw! April Marcas po, ang inyong pretty ate sa Edtech Unit. Alam ba ninyo na may webinar o online training session ang Edtech Unit tuwing Sabado? Ang araw na ito ay nakalaan para sa ating mga mahal na kaguruan upang turuan sila ng mga bagong kaalaman at kakayahan sa paggamit ng makabagong software at applications para sa pinaka-epektibong paraan at lubos mapaghusay ang kanilang paraan ng pagtuturo. This is also our refresher session for our beloved teachers to enhance their skills in technology. Every Saturday, we will conduct webinar sessions for teachers about the use, advantages, and relevance of different blended learning software applications. Ang webinar seryeng ito ay magsisimula ng alas 9 ng umaga hanggang alas 12 ng tanghali para sa morning session. Magsisimula naman ng alauna at magtatapos ng alas 4 ng hapon ang afternoon session. You can watch us in our DepEd Educational Unit Facebook page, Educational Technology Unit YouTube channel, DepEd Tayo, and DepEd Philippines. Kita-kits tayo tuwing Sabado!
Magandang araw! Sir Wilbur po, at your service. Narito ang ETULay upang gabayan ka sa inyong pag-aaral upang lubos na maunawaan ang iba't ibang paksa o subject. Ang ETULay ay isang free online tutorial class na pinangungunahan ng ICT's Educational Technology Unit sa pamumuno ni Undersecretary Elaine Del B. Pascua. Ang programang ito ay hindi lamang para sa mga bata, kundi ito rin ay magsisilbing gabay sa mga magulang at mga guro kung paano nila ituturo o gagabayan sa bawat asignatura ang kanilang mga anak o mga estudyante. Sa kasalukuyan, ang self-learning module mula sa rehiyon ng Calabarzon at kilala sa tawag na pivot ang ginagamit sa ating ETULay online class. Kaya ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Ihanda na ang inyong mga ballpen o lapis, papel o kwaderno at samahan kaming itulay ang pagkatuto para sa bawat batang Pilipino. Sama-sama tayong magtutulungan para malampasan ang mga hamon sa panahong ito. Halina't matuto kasama ang inyong online tutor sa oras na ito.
Magandang hapon po sa lahat, lalong-lalo na po sa ating mga senior high school learners and parents who are watching our live stream of our online tutorial. At pa-shoutout din po sa aming Public Schools District Supervisor for District Learning Area 1 na si Ma'am Melvin Baldumar, and to our Division Supervisor in Science, Ma'am Juliet Montibon. And also, I would like to greet din po ang lahat ng mga research teachers na nanonood po ngayon. Alright? At magandang hapon din po sa lahat ng ating online viewers. Hello po and welcome to our tutorial session. We have Hazel Ann, Lorenzo, Julie Ann, Andrea, Stacy, Charlie, Jean Kenneth, Alan, Micah, Francis. Okay? We have Ana Dalangin and a lot more. Okay? Ako po si Tutor June at muli, samahan niyo ako class as we learn very important topics for inquiries, investigations, and immersion. And today's exciting session will lead us to understand our topic on Quarter 3, Week 7. Which deals on the population and sampling for quantitative and qualitative research. Specifically, at the end of this tutorial session, you are expected to determine the appropriate quantitative or qualitative sampling techniques used in a given research scenario, and also you will be able to compute for the sample size given the study's population size and the desired margin of error. And for the information of everyone, we are basing our tutorial session today with the self-learning module from DepEd Bataan on Inquiries, Investigations, and Immersion, Quarter 3, Module 7, entitled Population and Sampling Methods, with the main author, Dr. Marilu A. Bugtong. To begin, let us have this preliminary activity. You are going to answer the questions that follow by choosing the letter of the correct answer. Please write your answers in our live streams comment section. And also, do not forget class to indicate the item that you are answering. All right? Are you ready? Ready na po ba tayo? Let's start. A survey will be given to 100 students randomly selected from the grade 11 classes at Magsaysay National High School. Question number 1. What is the target population of the study? Again, what is the target population of the study? A. 100 grade 11 students of MNHS. B. All grade 11 students of MNHS. C. All senior high school students of MNHS. And letter D. All juniors and seniors of MNHS. Let me check who got it right. Again, write your answers in the comment section. Write the letter of your answer. Stacy answered letter B, as well as Andrea. Okay. Maria Gloria Gallo also answered letter B. The correct answer is B. The target population of the given study are all grade 11 students of Magsaysay National High School. Good job. Number 2. Given the same study, what is the sample? A. 100 grade 11 students of MNHS. B. All grade 11 students of MNHS. C. All senior high school students of MNHS. And letter D. All juniors and seniors of MNHS. All right, let me check your answers. Maria Gloria answered A. Julianne, Jean Kenneth, as well as Arlene Fernandez all answered A. The correct answer is A. The sample of the study are the 100 students randomly selected from the grade 11 classes at Magsaysay National High School. Very good. Next, let us answer question number 3. Simple random sampling is a blank sampling method. Again, simple random sampling is a blank sampling method. A. Confusing. B. Non-probability. C. Probability. D. Target population. Allow me to read your answers in the comment section. Ana Dalangin answered C, as well as Andrea Socor, Maria Gloria Gallo, Lorenzo Aureliano, Crishale, Jean Kenneth, Jonah Auditor, Micah, and a lot more answered letter C. You are correct. That is letter C. Simple random sampling is a probability sampling method. Good job. And finally, number 4, which is not a feature of qualitative sampling. A. Samples tend to be small and studied intensively. B. Participants are selected randomly. C. Sample members are not pre-specified. And letter D. Sample selection is driven by conceptual ideas rather than for representativeness. Again, which is not a feature of qualitative sampling. Julianne answered letter B. Jane Wency answered B. Maria Gloria Gallo, as well as Stacy, Mary Jorens also answered letter B. And the correct answer is letter B. The said feature, participants are selected randomly, is not a feature of qualitative sampling, but of a quantitative sampling. All right, congratulations class for answering it all correctly. Pero sa mga hindi po nakapagsagot ng tama in all items, it means that you have a lot more to learn about this topic. Pero wag po kayong mag-alala, we are going to discuss in detail as we will further elaborate the different probability and non-probability sampling techniques in our tutorial session today. To start, let us define first the terms population and sample. Ano po ba ang ibig sabihin ng population and sample of a given study? Class, population refers to the totality of individuals or objects. That is the main focus of a scientific query. Or when we say population, it is actually a group of individuals who have the same characteristic. For example, all teachers would make up the population of teachers. And all senior high school students in a school's division would comprise the population of senior high school students. The population class can be small or large, depending on what group you would like to study. In practice, researchers select a target population or the sampling frame. Or these are a group of individuals with some common defining characteristic that the researcher can identify and study. For example, in the population of all senior high school students in a school's division, we can have our target population to be the grade 12 senior high school students only in your school. And within this target population class, researchers then select only a portion of this to be studied. Since when you conduct a research or a study with a large group of people, it is rarely possible to collect data from every person in your target population. It's very tedious class. That is why we only select a portion or part of the population that represents the population from which it was selected. This is referred to as our sample. For instance, you might select a sample from your target population of grade 12 senior high school students in your school. You may do it randomly or non-randomly using the probability and non-probability sampling techniques. Again, class, there are two categories of sampling: the probability or random sampling and non-probability or non-random sampling. In probability or random sampling, every member of the population has a known chance of participating in the study. In here, the researcher selects individuals or samples from the population who are representative of the study. This is the most rigorous form of sampling, mostly applicable in quantitative research, because the investigator can claim that the sample is representative of the population and as such can make generalizations to the population. But in reality, class, it is not always possible to use probability sampling in educational research. So instead, a researcher can use non-probability sampling. In non-probability sampling, sampling group members are selected in non-random manner. Therefore, not each population member has a chance to participate in the study, like involving participants who volunteer to be studied only. And non-random sampling class is often used by qualitative researchers or in qualitative research, since they are not interested in generalizing findings to a population, but only describing a small group of participants in a study. Pero gumagamit din po ang mga quantitative researchers ng non-probability sampling if it is not possible po to randomly select the respondents. However, kapag walang randomness po ang data natin, hindi na po tayo makakagamit ng mga parametric tests. So kung maaari for quantitative research, we need to randomly select our respondents, and this will be further discussed when we reach the topic on data analysis. And for our session today, we will be discussing 3 of the most common probability or random sampling techniques and 4 non-probability or non-random sampling techniques. We will start our discussion sa pinaka-simple na probability sampling technique, which is the simple random sampling. In simple random sampling, every member of the population has a known and equal chance of being selected in the sample sa pamamagitan ng pag-draw randomly sa list of the population or sa lista, no? Sa listahan ng population mo. For example, getting the names from a hat or in a fishbowl, we can also do simple random sampling using a matrix of random numbers or using the random calculator. The lottery method, just like what PCSO is doing, is also a simple random sampling technique. All right? Now, a slight variation of the simple random sampling procedure is to use systematic sampling. When you say systematic, from the name itself, meron po tayong system o ordering scheme na fina-follow po sa technique na ito. In this procedure, you choose every kth element or nth individual in the population list to be included in the sample. For example, in a population list of 5,000 names, to select a sample of 500, a researcher would select every 10th name on the list until reaching a total of 500 names, if given that the desired sample size is 500. Now, the interval size or sampling interval denoted as K is the distance in the list between each of the individuals selected for the sample. A simple formula to determine this is K or sampling interval is equal to capital N divided by small n, or is equal to the population size divided by the desired sample size. All right? At para po walang bias class sa simple random sampling, okay? In this sampling technique, it involves a random start from integer between 1 to k and then proceeds with the selection of every kth element of the population as a sample by skipping through the list using the regular interval k. For example, we are going to choose a sample of size 15 from N or population size of 150 using systematic random sampling. Step 1, we are going to determine the sampling interval K. Again, K is equal to the population size, 15, divided by the desired sample size, the population size of 150 divided by the desired sample size of 15. So we have 150 divided by 15 is equal to 10. Hence, K is equal to 10. This means that you have to include every 10th member of the population after choosing a random start. Step 2, you can randomly select a starting point, let's say 5, using a simple random sampling. From number 5, every 10th person on the list is selected. Hence, we have 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, so on and so forth until you will get 15 samples. All right? Another type of probability sampling is the stratified random sampling, which is a process in which certain subgroups or strata are selected for the sample in the same proportion as they exist in the population. In stratified sampling, researchers divide or stratify the population on some specific characteristic. For example, gender or grade level can be a stratum in a particular study. And then, using simple random sampling, the researchers select samples from each subgroup or stratum of the population. So, if gender is the stratum of the study, hence, we need to get proportional samples of the female and male respondents in the study. Pero kailan ba tayo gumagawa, class, ng stratification or kailan tayo nagsa-stratify? We use stratification when the population reflects an imbalance on a characteristic of a sample, assuming that there are more males than females in a population. Hence, a simple random sample or a simple random sampling from this population would likely result in the selection of more males than females or maybe even no females. So, to correct this, researchers use stratified sampling since stratification ensures that the stratum desired will be represented in the sample in the same proportion as they exist in the population. For example, here is an illustration of the proportional stratification sampling approach given the strata of boys and girls. The stratum boys is 1/3 or 0.66 of the population of 9,000 students. And the second stratum, girls, is 2/3 or 0.33 of the population. Since the researcher decides to choose a sample of 300 from this population of 9,000 children, hence we are going to multiply each sampling ratio or proportion to the desired sample size. Therefore, to determine the number of samples for boys, we will just multiply 0.66 to 300. So we will get 200 samples from boys, and 0.33 times 300 is equal to 100. Hence, we will get 100 samples from girls. All right? Naintindihan po ba? Class, you can also try this proportional stratification sampling approach by grade level or by class sectioning in your own study. And speaking of sample size, class, the most commonly used way to get the sample size is the Sloven's formula. In symbol, sample size denoted by small n is equal to the population size denoted by capital N divided by 1, okay, plus n times e squared, where e is the desired margin of error in decimal. Class, ano po ba ang ibig sabihin ng margin of error or sampling error? A general rule of thumb is to select as large a sample as possible from the population. The larger the sample, the less the potential error that sample will be different from the population. Hence, the difference between the sample estimate and the true population score is called the sampling error. Therefore, since you usually cannot know the true population score, it is important to select as large a sample as possible from the population to minimize sampling error. The margin of error or sampling error, class, differs in the kind or type of your research study. Medical and health studies use 0.01 or 1% margin of error only since it deals with life. Descriptive and experimental studies use 0.05 or 5% margin of error. This is the most commonly used margin of error in educational research or in the social sciences. On the other hand, if the characteristics of the population cannot be described clearly, 0.1 or 10% margin of error is used for descriptive or survey studies. All right, let us have an example. Let's compute for the sample size of a given study with a margin of error of 5% and a population size of 5,000 students. So we have, okay, 5,000 all over 1 plus 5,000 times 0.05 square, which is equal to 370. Okay, kindly double check, class, if you will have the same result using your calculator. All right? Hence, we will be getting 320 samples given the population size of 5,000 with a 5% margin of error. If the margin of error is 1%, then we will have 5,000 all over or divided by 1 plus 5,000 times 0.01 square, which is equal to 3,333. Hence, we will be getting 3,333 samples given the population size of 5,000 and a margin of error of 1%. So kung maliit yung margin of error, mas malaki po ang sample size na kukunin natin sa study. All right? Any questions so far, class? Next up, we are going to discuss the different non-probability sampling techniques. Remember, non-probability or non-random sampling class is often used by qualitative researchers since they are not interested in generalizing findings to a population, but only in describing a small group of participants in a study. In here, the researcher selects participants because they are willing and available to be studied or based on the purpose of your research. In this case, the researcher cannot say with confidence that the individuals are representative of the population. The first non-probability sampling technique is the convenience sampling. Convenience sampling is selecting a group of individuals who are conveniently available for study or easy to recruit by the researcher. For example, you may ask any willing learner to answer the online survey. That is using convenience sampling. An alternative to convenience sampling is snowball sampling. One sample leads on to more of the same kind of sample. That is why this is also referred to as chain referral sampling. So in snowball sampling, the researcher asks participants to identify others to become members of the sample. For example, you are researching the experiences of homeless people in your city. And since there is no list of all homeless people in the city, let's say in Ormoc City, probability sampling is not possible. Since you meet one homeless person along the way as you as you administer your instrument, okay? You meet one homeless person who agrees to participate in the research or in your study. So you put her in contact with other homeless people that she knows in your area or in the area that she is residing. So that is an example of snowball sampling. Thus, in here, the researcher or the researcher's sample builds and becomes larger as the study continues, just like a snowball. Okay? If you imagine a snowball where it builds and becomes larger as it rolls through the snow. All right? The third non-probability sampling is the purposive sampling, which is also called as judgment sampling. Since in here, the researcher or the researchers believe that using their judgment to select a sample based on prior information will provide the data they need. The researcher chooses the sample based on who they think would be appropriate for the study. For example, in a study involving diabetes, the researcher will only choose diabetic persons. So this is an example of a purposive sampling. Lastly, quota sampling is another non-probability sampling strategy. In this type of non-probability sampling, the number of samples is decided by the researcher and selection is also made out of the availability of the respondent. The researcher ensures equal or proportionate representation of the subjects depending on which trait is considered as basis of the quota. For example, in a population, you want to select 60% men and 40% women. In this case, you will select samples non-randomly until you reach 60% men. Let's say using convenience sampling. So you reach 60% men, that is 6 out of 10, and 40% women, that is 4 out of 10. Hence, you will stop obtaining the samples once you have reached your quota. All right? Now that you have gained clear understanding on how to determine the appropriate probability and non-probability sampling techniques, as well as determining the appropriate sample size, let us apply what you have learned by answering the following activities. Let us start with identifying what probability or non-probability sampling technique is used in the given scenario. Write your answer in the stream's comment section. Number 1, a research is conducted to determine the level of language proficiency and numeracy skills among the 150 STEM, 200 ABM, 250 UMS, and 400 GA students of Ginaruna National High School. The researcher wants a sample of 300 by selecting representatives from each strand. What type of probability sampling technique is this? Write your answer in the comment section. Judea de Golacion answered stratified random sampling. Jane Wency Tadora answered probability. You specify, Jane Wency, if what type of probability sampling technique is this? Diana Lin answered stratified, as well as Ana Dalangin. That is correct. This is stratified random sampling. Number 2, during the conduct of his survey, Lucas chose his respondents by ensuring that they are those who can provide him the needed data for his study. The type of non-probability sampling that he utilized is known as A, convenience sampling, B, purposive sampling, C, snowball sampling, D, quota sampling. Write the letter of your answer in the comment section. Maria Gloria Judea answered letter B, as well as Ana Dalangin. Regine, Jane Wency, Fatima answered letter B. That is correct. Purposive sampling. Number 3, Maricel determines her respondents by asking people as to who would be most suited for her study. Through this, she is referred from one respondent to the other. What type of non-probability sampling has been utilized? A, convenience sampling, B, purposive sampling, C, snowball sampling, D, quota sampling. For number 3, Maria Gloria answered C, Judea, Julian answered C, as well as Ana Dalangin, Stacy, Micah, and others. Okay? The correct answer is letter C, snowball sampling. Very good. Now, in Part 2, you are going to compute for the sample size using the Sloven's formula. Okay, the question is, how many samples are we going to get if the population size is 1,200 and the margin of error is 5% or 95% accuracy? All right? So use your calculator or your cell phone to compute for the sample size given the population size of 1,200 with a 5% margin of error. What's the answer, class? Again, what is the formula to solve for the sample size using the Sloven's formula? That is, n, or sample size, is equal to the population size divided by 1 plus n times e squared, where your e is the margin of error. All right? Stacy answered 300 samples. Judea, Jan Vergabas, Maria Gloria, Eliza, Charlie, all answered 300 samples. Correct? We will get 300 samples in the study given the population size of 1,200 and with a 5% margin of error. All right? Very good, class. Now, for your assignment, since this is 3 I's, you are going to write the sampling design of your own study following the guidelines presented in this tutorial class. You may post it in your FB timeline and use the hashtag ETULay III sampling. Again, the hashtag is hashtag ETULay III sampling. And presenting to you our 3 I's Cutie of the Week na si Judea de Golacion from Ormoc City Senior High School, DepEd Region 8. According to her, as a student in this time of pandemic, it's very difficult to learn things on my own. When I discovered about the weekly ETULay tutorial sessions, it truly helped me because I was able to replay the clips of the discussion and was able to get all the important points that I truly need to remember, which is very essential for memory retention in preparation for my upcoming exams, especially in the inquiries, investigations, and immersion subject. Good luck for your upcoming exam, Judea. And thank you, as well as congratulations also. So, just like Judea class, patuloy lang po ang ating panunood at pagsubaybay every Friday. And I'm sure na may matutunan po kayo sa ating weekly tutorial sessions for III. At iyan po ang ating online tutorial sa linggong ito. See you po in our next tutorial session. Same time, same day. This has been your ETULay tutor, Sir June, na nag-iiwan ng katagang, the research of today shall speak the innovations of tomorrow. Thank you and happy researching!
Sigurado ako na marami ka na namang natutuhan sa ating ETULay tutorial session ngayong araw. Tandaan, ito ay hindi lamang para sa ating mga mag-aaral, kundi pati rin sa ating mga minamahal na guro at mga magulang na kaagapay natin para maituloy ang pagkatuto sa kabila ng nararanasang pandemya. Patuloy ding sumubaybay sa DepEd TV para sa mga araling ginawang video episodes. Mapapanood ito mula Lunes hanggang Sabado, alas 7 ng umaga hanggang alas 7 ng gabi sa inyong mga telebisyon. Abangan sa Lunes mula 1:00 ng tanghali ang iba pang aralin sa ating ETULay free online tutorial session sa Science. I-like and subscribe at manatiling nakasubaybay sa ating ETULay tutorial session sa DepEd Edtech Unit FB page at Educational Technology Unit channel sa YouTube at sa DepEd Tayo at DepEd Philippines social media accounts. Paalam!